بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله أما بعد. Continuing our lessons on the practical guide to seeking Islamic knowledge. Last week we spoke about the curriculum for studying Aqidah. And this week, inshallah, we'll talk about fiqh. And also we'll talk about some tips in relation to taking notes and reviewing knowledge. So inshallah, let's talk about the fiqh now. Then last time we spoke about the aqidah. So what books are we taking in fiqh? So we said in the beginning of the classes, the fiqh that's wajib on everybody is the fiqh that you have to know every day and night. So it begins with the wajib of at-tahara, and then salah. And this is wajib every day and night. You have to make wudu, you have to know ghusl, you have to know tayammum and masah, you have to know then the salah, which is 5 times a day, and anything else that would arise from that, from the fiqh issues, depending on the situations. That's why we said some of the fiqh issues are fiqh al-hal, yani depends on your situation. Ilm al-hal, are you doing a business transaction now? Then you have to know that. Are you going for Umrah or Hajj right now? Then you have to know that. So, the ulama, when it comes to talking about fiqh, then they say you start there. So you have to start with the wudu and the tahara. And some of the books of fiqh, they compile knowledge about that, just wudu and tahara in general. Many of the fiqh books, if you look at them, for any madhab, they have that. They start with tahara. And when we say tahara is the entire chapter. It's not just wudu. It starts with bab al-miyah, the water itself. But because a person in the beginning, he has to make wudu, then later he can learn the different categories if he needs that. So in a book like, for example, we have Shurut al-Salah, Shaykh al-Islam Muhammad Abdul Wahhab, rahimahullah. That's a good example of a book that teach you the tahara, yani the wudu, and the salah. It won't necessarily teach you ghusl or other things, but teach you what is the wudu, what is the conditions of prayer, what are the obligations of prayer, and the pillars. And so if someone were to read that and go over it, the explanation, they would know how to pray properly, the basics of it. And this is to do with the ahkam, specifically because before you start the salah, you need to know the conditions of it. And from those conditions is tahara, right? Wudu. So that's why that book is useful. And then after that, someone can do the Prophet's prayer described, Sifat al-Salah of Imam al-Albani, rahimahullah. Either they can do the regular book or the mukhtasar, the summarized version. It's up to them. But the full one is great, very beneficial. Some people, they do the summarized one. And Sifat Salah is very important because it's all based on the hadith. Yes, there are some differences between what Shaykh Albani declares to be the most correct opinion, and some scholars will differ, but in general, it's based on Quran and hadith. Very good book. So some people like to do a summarized one, just know the steps. And some people like to know the hadith, but it's very useful. And the benefit behind Sifat Salah is the muqaddimah, the introduction of Shaykh Albani puts in the beginning, where he talks about the manhaj of Salaf al-Salih in studying fiqh. Ittiba' and not taqleed. Right? So most of us, we know that. If you read the Muqaddim introduction of Sifat Salah, it's very useful. It teaches you about the importance of following the Sunnah of Rasulullah, and all the Imams, we follow them in relation to the Sunnah. So if they made a mistake or a different opinion, no harm, and we follow the evidences in a stronger view. So Sifat Salah, it's about the Sifah, how to pray Salah. Shaykh Albani rahimahullah starts with those pillars to do with the salah, like facing the qibla and standing, and then goes from there. But then if you want to know the shurut, the conditions, you have to start with a book like Shurut al-Salah. So if you study Sifat Salah, what are you studying Sifah? How to pray. So what is the ilm of Salah encompass? The knowledge of Salah encompasses first, you have to know the conditions of prayer, the pillars of prayer, the obligations of prayer, the Sifah, description of prayer, and nullifiers of prayer. That's the whole subject. Conditions, pillars, obligations, description, and then nullifiers. So when you read Shaykh Albani's book, primarily where is it? It's Sifah, description. So if you want to know, he talks a little bit about different things too, but if you want to know, for example, what breaks the salah, and then the other books will help you in that. So the reason why it's important to know that simple salah is a necessary read, but it's not going to do it alone if you don't know anything about pillars of prayer, for example. Or the conditions of prayer. It does talk about pillars, talks about obligations. So there are some books where the ulama have compiled all of them in an easier read, and that runs it through all of that. An example of that will be the Kitab, Shaykh Salih Fawzan, a summary of Islamic jurisprudence. Mulakhas Fiqhi. I think we have it here in the English one. It's 2 volumes, but you read in the beginning. The first chapter, second chapter, third chapter, like that. The Kitab al-Tahara wa-Salah. And it's all in English. Shaykh Salih Fawzan, Hafidhullah Ta'ala, his book is very good. A lot of people, they don't remember it. He has the whole fiqh in there, but in that one, he starts with the Tahara all the way from the water downwards, each chapter. So again, it's in English. You can find PDF or you can find it in print. It's a nice book because it covers everything. It's organized nicely. So that's another way of doing it if someone just wants to read one book and just go through all those chapters. But whereas you're going to read from the first chapter all the way to Salah, how much he needs to know. Some people like to also study fiqh by way of hadith. And both approaches are fine. Right now what we suggested, like Shaykh Al-Albani's book is based on the hadith. He's not following one madhab. Some people like to follow the approach of a madhab, to take a small matan mukhtasar, a small fiqh manual and read that. On tahara wa salah, and that's fine. But you have to know each approach has advantages and disadvantages. The advantages of studying fiqh matan, like a book like Umdat al-Ahkam, Umdat al-Fiqh, or Umdat al-Talib, or Matan Abu Shuja'a, any of these small books in fiqh. Fajr, alhamdulillah, I covered a lot of them in those dawras, those seminars. He did them, I think all 4 fiqh madhabs, a small one. When you read those, the advantage of those books, they give you the masail, they give you the issues ready. Issue 1, 2, 3, all the issues that you need to know. But they don't give you the adillah. See, they teach you first the issues, then they tell you later the evidence when you go up. For example, you start with, like we're doing on Saturday, Umdat al-Fiqh. Umdat al-Fiqh is matan. The second level you go higher, or you read the commentary. The commentary brings you the evidence for what the Shaykh said. The Shaykh just tells you what you need to know, the summary. So for example, Salah 1, 2, 3, this is what you need. So why did you do that? So you can first know what the issue is. Later you get the evidence. Whereas fiqh al-hadith, when people study hadith, they'll study the evidence first, and then they derive the masail. Umdat al-Ahkam, or Bulugh al-Maram. These are books of hadith. What's their advantage? You learn the evidence first, and then you extract the evidences after. Or the masail, the issues that you're studying. So you read a hadith, and say from this hadith we learned 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's why when you read explanations, you see the ulama, they do both. And ultimately, you have to do both. There's no fiqh without hadith. No hadith without fiqh. You need both. But the approaches are both there. Many of the scholars, they prefer studying a fiqh book, which just gives you the masail first, then learn the evidence later. So you know what you need to know first, and later you can learn the proof why. Because the beginner is allowed to do taqleed. But he should know, for example, salah is like this. 1, 2, 3. If someone knows the hadith and they don't know the masail, but sometimes it happens, someone studied the hadith book, but he doesn't know what to derive from the hadith, then he's going to be falling short. And some of the derivations or the deductions of the ulama are not even based on direct evidence. They're based on ta'leel. Ta'leel is rationale. There's no Quran hadith there. I say, brothers, we learn, but fiqh, when it comes to fiqh or any evidence, not everything is Quran and Sunnah. Some chapters of fiqh, there's no Quran or Sunnah. So what the ulama do? They do ijtihad. Everyone is going to bring his best explanations to what's the best opinion. Ta'leel is called. They're just going to say, well, based on the other evidences, this is probably the best conclusion. Another group will say, no, this one. And they both don't have evidences. They're going to use the general evidences, and that's fine. But the benefit by studying fiqh first, by studying the masail, you know what you're supposed to know, and later you can figure out if the proof is correct or not. So in any case, some of the books try to combine both routes. And so, for example, some of the ulama, like Imam Shawkani, he wrote a book, Dur al-Bahiyya. Dur al-Bahiyya is a matan fil fiqh, not based on a madhab Ahl Hadith. Because Imam Shawkani, he's not a madhabist, right? He doesn't follow any madhab. It's Ahl Hadith. But he wrote his own curriculum for those studying fiqh who want to study from the madhab Ahl Hadith. And he has beginning, intermediate, and advanced. So showing you that you can study fiqh without a madhab. It's not a must. And the proof of that is like Imam Shawkani is considered, amongst all the ulama, is considered one of the greatest scholars. Mujtahid, right? He's more Zahiri in his approach. You can say that. He follows the way, closer way of Ibn Hazm al-Zahiri. But the reason he made his own matan, he takes all the correct views, puts it in a book, in his opinion, then later he explains it with the hadith, just like the Ahl Matan, Ahl Fiqh. But he's not following madhab. Either way, what you may notice, the beginning, since you're learning Tahara and Salah, you can take any of the approaches. Doesn't really matter, right? As long as you're getting what you need to know for your Tahara and your Salah. So remember, these are all basail, they're not the ghaya. The ghaya is the knowledge. So someone took this path, someone took that path, no problem. You all reach the same place. Because people get into heated debates on this stuff. You know, what's the better way? You follow madhab, no madhab. At the end of the day, we're all trying to learn the deen, right? Doesn't really matter. And each of the approaches have advantages. So some of the ulama, again, promote starting with the madhab, a text, a matan, and go from there, a small manual fiqh. Some say go straight to the hadith. And all approaches are acceptable. But the topics you're studying are the tahara, purification, then the prayer. And then after that, when you finish those two and you master them, like you know what you need to know, then you can go up from there to what you need. For example, Ramadan is coming now, very soon. Okay, I gotta learn Ramadan. It's the hal, the situation, it's the season. And zakat for some people, then you have to learn it, then you go from there. Part of tahara as well is for someone to study the fiqh and the ahkam in it. So tahara is abwab, it's chapters. So like we said, chapter of water, chapter of wudu, ghusl, tayammum, wiping over bandages, wiping over socks and leather socks. And it usually ends with the subject of hayd, menstruation. And this is for the women and the men, both. It's from the ilm al-tahara, ilm al-wajib. Because if it's a woman, then she needs to know for her own self. And as for a man, he needs to know for his wife or his mother or his daughter or anyone else. So for that, scholars, what kind of book can someone study that subject? Menstruation, the rules of it, there are many places. Again, Shaykh Salih Fawzan in his book, Murakhas Fiqhi over there, he has a chapter. That's one way. Just read his chapter, understand it. Or Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen, it's one of probably the best contemporary work, Natural Blood. Written by Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen, Natural Blood or Natural Bleeding, I think one of the two, I don't remember how to translate it. That's a very useful book. He makes it very easy, he summarizes everything, and gives you principles. And so it's important to study that. That's part of tahara. So the idea is you're studying all those. After all of that, then you have the ilm wajib that fard ayn, everyone needs to know fiqh. Means beyond that, it would depend on the situation. If it's Ramadan, then okay, now it's fard ayn till Ramadan. But let's say it's not Ramadan. Every day you need to know how to make wudu, how to make ghusl. If you need to make ghusl, what's the conditions for ghusl? If I'm going to be wiping over my socks, I'm wearing socks. What's the rules? Salah. And part of salah is, if I break my wudu, what do I do? Sujood al-sahw. All those things connected to it. And majority of the people today, this is the questions that they ask. These are the questions that they ask, and these are the questions that we need to ask ourselves. So a person should study them, and study them well. Once he's finished that, then they can move on to whatever is else wajib on them at the moment, or that which comes naturally after, which will be then siyam, because everyone has to fast Ramadan, as long as they're healthy and capable. And if you have money, zakat, and if you go for Umrah Hajj. And remember, this is all to do with fiqh al-ibadat. This is all fiqh al-ibadat, worship. So fard ayn is fiqh al-ibadat, starting with the tahara and the salah. So fiqh al-mu'amalat though, the other chapter of fiqh, for fiqh is two chapters, two big chapters. Fiqh al-mu'amalat. Mu'amalat is business or transactional fiqh. Mu'amalat is dealings, you can say, mutual dealings. In that is a chapter of marriage, with talaq, with buyu', business, and all the other stuff. Qada and so mu'amalat is the second half. Usually fiqh books are divided like that. First the ibadat, then the mu'amalat. Obviously you cannot do without them, but you don't put the cart over the horse. You're not going to be studying business unless business is something you're doing as a job. Yes, you should know some basic fiqh of business, but the most important is what to do between you and Allah. Mu'amalat most to do with you and the creation. The dealings between you and the creation, that's what mostly mu'amalat deals with. Or ibadat between you and Allah. So it is important that we understand this, because most people, they skip the fiqh ibadat. And the dalil of that is that if something comes up, the fiqh questions that come up, most of the time it's to do with salah. And then it's clear that most people, especially the awam, maybe 8 or 9 out of 10, they're going to ask you a salah question. Because their knowledge doesn't go above that. So you knowing it is great. You become great benefit for the community, because you can say salah is valid, not valid, go pray again. And most questions are that way. But imagine you yourself don't know it, then also means you're still at the beginner. Because obviously the questions that are above that have to do with other chapters of fiqh. And from there, after someone finishes this much, they can then go into the other chapters of fiqh. Ultimately, if you go above all this, you go to intermediate level, which you're going to go higher than this. So what's the difference between the beginner and intermediate? The beginner level of fiqh, you know the basics. You know the rules you're supposed to know. You know how to pray. You know how to make wudu. And if someone, what does it mean knowing? At least you could tell me the rules. You do this, you do that. You might not know the adillah, you don't know the evidence necessarily. But at least you know the conclusion. This breaks your salah. If you ask me why, I might not know yet, but I know it does. That's basics. But if you know the evidence, you're higher level. So ultimately, fiqh is studied the ulama. When they talk about fiqh, how do you know if you know something? Fiqh is 4 things. There are 4 things you need to know in order to know fiqh. It means if you do a hukum, if someone has a ruling of something, there's 4 things you have. Number 1, tasawwur mas'ala. You have the conception of the issue. Ma hiya mas'ala? What's the issue we're discussing? For example, is it sutra wajib or not? That's a mas'ala. Mas'ala means question. So fiqh is broken into masail. Masail. Number 1, 2, 3, 10,000. I mean, how many masail of fiqh are there? Depends, right? The ulama say, but we know it's thousands, brothers, thousands. And the proof of that, the fiqh is amongst the biggest of subjects. Right? Mawsu'a fiqhiyya Kuwaitiyya is 45 volumes. That's the whole fiqh. 45 volumes, all that. Every issue you could think of under the sun is there. So of course, the masail are many. So what you need to know, the fiqh is organized by masail. Masail is question or issue. For example, sutra wajib or mustahab. That's mas'ala. That's the issue. So the first is tasawwur mas'ala. What are we talking about? We're talking about sutra. هل هي واجبة أو مستحبة? That's the first. That's the question. That's someone's going to ask you. That's what you're studying. So you're going to come then with the tasawwur, because you know it's between these two. You're not going to say, someone's not going to tell you sutra is makruh. Which masala is that? Where does that come from? There's no tasawwur there. Someone said sutra is haram. He didn't have tasawwur masala. He didn't understand anything. Because the issue between wajib and mustahab is not about haram. So who gives us the masail? The fuqaha. The jurists, they write down the issue. This is the issue. Sometimes they number, number 1, or they put in the book, issue. Sutra, wajib or not. So why is it studied this way? Because what you're trying to connect to it, you're trying to connect the hukum, or ruling. And the ruling are 5, right? What are they? Wajib, mustahab, or mandub, or mubah, or makruh, or haram. So you're trying to figure out which of these 5 is it. So fiqh is organized by issue and the human's relationship to that issue. You have to have a sutra. It's recommended to have a sutra. These are the issues. So the hukum with the issue, this is the first one. That's the first point. So someone asks you, what's the rule in sutra? They say sutra is wajib. That's the mas'ala, that's fiqh, that's ilm. But that's the first level, right? Because now the next one is dalil. Number 2, dalil. What's the dalil for that? So obviously you're going to tell them what's the dalil, right? I mean, hopefully. If you want to be a faqih, you should know the dalil. So dalil is qal Allah, qal Rasul. So what is adillah then? That's the question. And that's where the khilaf comes. Because some of the ulama have different opinion what a dalil is. Everyone agrees to the 4. Quran, Sunnah, Ijma' wal Qiyas. Quran, Sunnah, consensus, analogy. Everyone agrees to these 4. And after that, the adillah mukhtalifa. And everyone differed. Right? So why I'm saying this? Because someone asks you dalil, qal Allah, qal Rasul, Ijma' ulama, and Qiyas. If you go reaching for qiyas, you know, it's a little weak, right? But usually some issues are based on qiyas, analogy. Point is, you give me a proof for it. So example, someone says it was sutra wajib, you're looking for a proof. Where's the proof? That's the second level. So the beginner might just know the mas'ala. In the fiqh books, what are they going to tell you? This issue, that's it. Sutra is not wajib, that's it. Jumhur ulama, they say it's not wajib. And a minority, they say it's wajib. So that's why I'm using this example, just as an example, but you learned it. Let's say you read a fiqh book. It says sutra is not wajib. Okay, that's all I remember. Now, that's the first level. Second level, okay, why? I need a proof. Number 3 now, I need to know how the proof works. Wajhu dalala or istidlal. This is where the debate really is. Most of the debate is not always on dalil. Dalala or dilala or istidlal. How do you reach that proof? How does the hadith prove that? You see, this is the part where the fuqaha, this is where they're working in, mostly. You said this hadith proves wajib. Kaif? How? That's the part where you say this person now is getting, like, this is a proper faqih now, the person who knows how and why they reach that conclusion. So how do you know, for example, your opinion or your hadith or the ayah you're using as proof? What are you going to use to establish it? Usul al-fiqh. That's what usul al-fiqh is for. To take the ayah and bring out wajib. Take the hadith, bring out mustahab. That's called usul al-fiqh. Usul al-fiqh is what you study after you study basic fiqh that you need to know every day and night, to study how to study fiqh. And this study, brother, is very important because without it, you're not going to be advanced. You might have the conclusion, you have the proof, but you don't know how. And that means you're going to be weak because someone will bring another proof and confuse you. Right? They'll say, how about this hadith? You're like, oh, okay, I don't know how to square these two. So then your proof is not good enough. And the fourth one is, who said it? And which shaykh or imam? The mustadil. Who came up with that proof? Who said it? So you could say Madhab Malikiyya or Shafi'iyya or Fulan Shaykh, Ibn Uthaymeen. Someone said it, right? So the fourth one's, who said it? Where did you get it from? Because we're not fuqaha, we're not imma. So we took it from somewhere. So these four are how fiqh is studied. The issue, and the first step is conceptualizing the issue, understanding its parameters. It's very important because if you have a wrong understanding of the issue, you don't have fiqh. Right? Because what does the scholars do? They're trying to restrict the situation, the scenario, or the mas'ala into a certain category or certain parameters so we're studying it. Otherwise, and that's why also sometimes the ulama are spending time figuring out what the issue is. The new issues nowadays, all this new stuff, why is it different than old fiqh? Because the new stuff we have to figure out first, what is it? And what is this issue? How does it work? What we call takyif. Right? We're trying to do takyif with mas'ala. What is the mas'ala? What does it look like? Where does it fit into the old books of fiqh? That's the hard part. But the point, most of fiqh is already set up for us. Everything's ready to go. The evidences. And of course, then you can learn how to reach the evidences. Then the who said it. And then when you have that, you have one opinion. The next madhab, they have their view, their proof, their istidlal, or the dalala, and their conclusion. The next madhab. So each one has one. So in the beginning, are we studying all four of them? Usually not. In the beginning, you're studying one of them. For example, this method will teach you one mas'ala, one opinion, and it's not even going to go through all four. It's just going to give you the first of the four. So for example, you open a Hanafi book, it's going to say this opinion, and that's it. That's it. It's not going to tell you how they got there. It's not going to tell you beyond. So it gives you 2 out of 4. Abu Hanifa said this, that's it. No proof and no how. Next level, intermediate book of fiqh is going to tell you what Abu Hanifa said again, how he got there and his proof. And he may even tell you then differences within Abu Hanifa's madhab. Maybe. And you go to the 4th level or 3rd level, then it's going to tell you what Abu Hanifa said, and other groups beside Abu Hanifa what they said. What Abu Hanifa's proof is and what their proof is. Why Abu Hanifa didn't take their proof, why they took their proof. So you go deeper. So the ulama, they mentioned this strategy of studying it 1, 2, 3. Where are you going? You're taking one opinion, then you introduce the 2 opinions, then you introduce the multiple opinions. Why? So your mind doesn't get everywhere. And you notice that usually scholars, they start off with the opinions in one madhab, then they bring you 2, 3 opinions in the same madhab, then they bring you opinions outside the madhab. Why? So your mind doesn't get confused. Most people in the beginning, what they're looking for? I just need something. I need one opinion. I need to work with some. Working knowledge, right? So as you study fiqh more, or any subject more, what are you trying to learn more? Difference of opinion maybe, or different views. And you're growing your knowledge and maybe even changing your opinion perhaps. That's the benefit of studying more, because if you're stuck in the same opinion, it's assuming you study all the other opinions out there. So the layperson doesn't go beyond just learning that one opinion. He might even learn maybe the proof for it, but that's it. Because he's not interested in getting more and more. Maybe he just wants to practice the worship Allah through that, and that's fine. Talib ilm, no. He wants to know the opinion, he wants to know differences, he wants to go more. Why? He wants to know what's the correct opinion. See, so usually the ulama, when they talk about these levels, the beginning, what's the most important thing for you? What are you doing today? What are you doing tonight? When you're praying salah, you're raising your hands, you're not raising it. So you need to have a opinion. And number 2, you hopefully have learned the proof with it. So sometimes scholars will introduce the proof immediately, or some of them wish to delay it. So the systems are different, but ultimately the goal is the same. And the person who studies fiqh properly, he's going to go from learning what to do, to why he does it, to how he knows why he's doing what is correct. And the more you grow in knowledge, the deeper you learn these things. And that's why the second level, after into beginning level, intermediate fiqh, you're studying now usul al-fiqh. Then you're going to study more advanced books of fiqh, where they introduce you to multiple opinions, or multiple reasons behind these opinions. And then you will learn comparative fiqh perhaps a bit. Again, scholars, they differ in how to do it, but some of them, they appreciate or they suggest starting immediately with comparative fiqh. So you can learn at least there's more than one opinion. And some like to choose one madhab and then grow from there. Again, both approaches are fine. But the goal is that you should understand when something is an ijma', when something is a different opinion, because it also allows you to practice the deen better. So again, going to the issues that we learned, if we're looking at the issue of sutra, if it's wajib, mustahab, immediately we learn there's different opinion. Why? Because one group says wajib, someone else says mustahab. Why is that important? If I see someone not praying with the sutra, I know maybe he's taking a different opinion. But if someone told you ijma' ulama, this is ijma' consensus, khalas, I don't need to know the adilla, ijma' is adilla for me. You see, so what's important, fiqh is a lot of difference of opinion, not in everything, not the major stuff, but in the minor shade, the details. Whereas aqeedah, the beauty of it, most of it is ijma'at. Right? And there's some differences when the more finer details. The benefit behind knowing this, that in the beginning, when people are studying, you only know one opinion. You're not reading the authority to be going and telling somebody that he's wrong, or you could just advise them. But maybe this is what I learned, just in case you don't know, because many people don't have any opinion. The ulama said, "Awam la madhhab lahu." The ami, the lay person, has no madhhab. His madhhab is the mufti's madhhab. So most people, when you ask them why you're doing this, he wouldn't know. So if you could share what you know, but imagine you meet somebody doing something you don't know, and you say, "Hey, this is wrong." Just be careful. It might be a different madhhab. He's going to tell you you're wrong, and you're going to walk away like, "I thought I was right." I see, because you're level 1. If you're level 1, that guy could be level 2. You can't just tell him he's wrong. You better bring your proof. And this is what most people find later. I thought it was only one opinion. Because you read only one book, man. Come on. If you're over here, you look at the other opinions. And a lot of us, we learned it the hard way, right? Because we get into arguments above our pay grade. And we're like, subhanAllah, I don't know where I'm going with this. Because they ask you, how is the proof? You don't know. You just know the proof. And you're citing, maybe appealing to authority. Sheikh Albani said, he doesn't know Sheikh Albani who he is. You don't even know enough Sheikh Albani to tell him who he is. Sometimes that happens, right? And now people have been making bad name. Sheikh Albani, everyone knows he's the Imam, right? Even the Ahl Bid'ah, they know. Sheikh Albani's makana, his status is so high. But unfortunately, some people run with his name. They didn't even know how Sheikh Albani argued. He didn't. Sifat Salah, brothers, is one of the 3 books. He has 3 books on Salah, brothers. The first Sifat Salah is 1,000 pages, called Kitab al-Asl. In that book is everything, all the adillah, all the khilafat, all the munaqashat. It was too long, so he made the regular one. Then it got too long. Then he made the mukhtasar one. So most of us, we know, if you go to Sheikh Albani's original book, then he'll show you all the fiqh opinions, differences, why he doesn't agree with them. You can see a real faqih. If we're going to read the summary, we should know that, okay, I should just advise the people. I shouldn't argue with them, especially if somebody knows more than you. Right? But again, as you study, learn more, you'll get to appreciate the fiqh. So if you're getting more than that, you're going towards more than intermediate things. And of course, for some people, they have more fiqh they have to learn than others. So, for example, someone who is not married will not have to know some of the chapters of fiqh of marriage, but if he's married, he would have to know it. So then he has to be prepared to know some of those issues. And if you go beyond that, you will see as you go slowly. So scholars, they talk about this. Here, we didn't put any usul of fiqh. Usul of fiqh is intermediate. And again, it also has levels, beginning, medium, and advanced. And also, there's also, like I said, the fiqh within the madhahib, a fiqh outside the madhahib, and some which are contemporary fiqh. And the preference, wallahu a'lam, is probably for somebody to learn a little bit of comparative fiqh is beneficial. I think so. Because we live in a place where there's no madhab. So it's not necessarily advantageous for us to learn one madhab, especially if there's no madhab of the land. The fuqaha, they always say, if you're living in a place, learn the madhab of the land. Why? Because then people will take you seriously because you're citing the madhab. So you're living in a place where the Shafi'i are, learn the madhab Shafi'i. So you can learn the different spectrum within it, so even you can prove the haqq from the madhab. Because they have different views. So you can say, this is a view amongst the Shafi'i, you quote some of them and people listen to you. But imagine you learn one madhab, you live somewhere where the madhab is not popular, you become awam. Right? Because no one knows the Hanbali madhab maybe. And Hanbali madhab is growing, but it's usually a smaller group amongst the madhab, although it's growing now due to the graduates teaching and explaining to people. But if you look at the other madhabs, they have larger groups, especially the Shafi'i and the Hanafi, the Hanaf. So let's say someone learns the Hanbali madhab and he lives in a place where nobody knows it. He tells someone of you, say, I've never heard that before. And Ahmed, they don't know, because some madhabs, they don't represent all the 4. So you're ami, they think you're ami, no one knows what Hanbali madhab is. So one of the advantages also is combining with your fiqh some adillah, because everyone respects Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, right? If you say, Qala Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they say, mashallah, this is enough. So it's advantageous to know some of the evidences, but to study comparative fiqh allows us to be more useful. Just so that we're not restricted ourselves to one opinion. Start with maybe studying a book where it teaches you different views. It might be useful, but some people find it hard to follow, so everybody is different, right? In Medina University, for example, they used to teach Al-Bidayat al-Mujtahid, Ibn Rushd, Maliki, contemporary fiqh, comparative fiqh, one of the best books in comparative fiqh ever written. But obviously, the people got, as time goes on, the students change, so they reverted to the Hanbali method, but now they're going back to Bidayat al-Mujtahid, I think. And so the benefit behind that book is when you graduate, someone who knows all the madhabs and even knows how they reached it. And we'll see that book maybe later, how valuable that book is. But imagine the difference. If graduates are going back home to different places, if they go back, for example, you send a graduate of Hanbali fiqh to Yamari, it's a Maliki place, It's not going to work. Right? It's not going to work. You're going to cite them stuff they never heard before. So knowing the different madahib can be useful, as we'll see. طيب, let's move on now for a second to some tips about writing notes. So when it comes to writing notes, brother asked a question last week. Inshallah, we're going to look at it. So when it comes to writing notes, there's a couple of things that we have to know. First, there's writing notes, and secondly, there's memorization. Memorization is the goal of knowledge. And the idea is that you try to memorize whatever you can of the knowledge you're learning, whether it be direct memory, verbatim, or at least just the gist of it. For example, if it's fiqh, maybe I don't remember all four. I remember the conclusion. It's wajib. It's mustahab. I can remember that. And maybe then the best after to know the actual evidence. But if you don't, at least you know the gist of it. So memorization is key. But let's talk about note-taking first, because note-taking leads to memorization. First, Prophet ﷺ told us to take notes. Wherever he's sitting, any lecture, he tries to take the notes. قال عليه الصلاة والسلام قيدوا علم بالكتابة. Secure knowledge to writing. Hadith Anas, Hadith Abbas, رضي الله عنهما, في سلسلة حديث صحيحة, Shaykh Amir authenticated it. I think the origin is probably maybe Hakim. قيدوا العلم بالكتابة. Secure or record knowledge by writing it. So the Hadith Sahih is the prophetic encouragement for us to write down the knowledge. And that's the adab, the ilm, that you try to write it. And why are you writing it down? Just put it in your memory eventually. Because what you write, you tend to recall and retain. So that's why you see the ulama, they're very strict about note-taking. Whatever you want to take. You can use a phone, you can use a tablet, you can use a computer. There's no discrimination to that. Back in the day, you used to use paper and pen. If some people like that, some like tablets, some ulama, it's okay. It doesn't matter. It's all wasa'il, right? Means. And the purpose behind note-taking is to help you memorize. And the proof for this, Abdullah ibn Amr al-As. Abdullah ibn Amr al-As was the only Sahabi who used to write down the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu fi zamani, in his time period. Very important hadith, brothers. He used to write down the Rasulullah hadith in front of Rasulullah. So this breaks the whole argument of Orientalists who say, and those other people who are ignorant, the first book ever written about Islam and Seerah was 150 years. What 150 years? What are you talking about? 150 years? That's Ibn Ishaq? You're talking about Ishaq, Ibn Hisham? See, they think that's the first book. Come on. First book at the time of Rasulullah sallallahu Abdullah ibn Amr al-As, he has a kitab, it's called Sahifa. The sheet of Abdullah ibn Amr al-As, and it's authentic. We have it now actually present with us. All these hadith in Bukhari, Muslim, and Muslim Ahmed, all of them. Well, that's the oldest book, hadith we know. And Sahaba didn't write down, like Abu Hurairah never wrote anything. It's all memory. But he used to write. And why is it important? The first book. Right? So that already spells all, like most of the doubts of Orientalists, the hadith literature. It's like, come on, man. The hadith tells us hadith was written down. And what happened was the Quraysh came to him, tried to make some doubts. They told him, do you write down everything Rasulullah sallallahu says? What if he gets angry? What if he gets sad? So Nabi sallallahu told him, look, write down everything that comes out of my mouth. By Allah, by the one who in his hand is my soul, nothing comes out of my mouth illa haqq, except for truth. So the Quraysh were trying to make doubt. Rasulullah said, ignore it. Because Nabi sallallahu when he told them, write it, it's wahi. So this is authentic hadith, with Sahih, Sunan Abi Dawud, 3646. You can find it narration 3646 in Sunan Abi Dawud. It's authentic. Shaykh Abdul authenticated it. The benefit behind this narration, Abdullah ibn Amr al-As says, I used to write everything down I heard from the Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam because I intended to memorize it. That's a shahid. I intended to memorize it. So what's the notes for? Put in your brain, in your heart, and to memorize it. Not to write down and put in your shelf. And that's a mistake. When you write the notes and you don't review it, it's not going to do nothing. Sufyan al-Thawri authentically said that how bad are these qaratis, these notebooks? Become graveyards of knowledge. We'll write down, put it away. So what did the Sahaba set up do with these books? They open it and they review with it. So when you have a review circle, you open the book and you read the fawaid. And the ulama, they continue to do it till today. Kitab al-Fawaid ibn Qayyim, Sayyid al-Qaadir ibn Jawzi, and the ulama passed, they have fawaid, the books of benefit. And then they have the books of hadith. That time there's no printing press, so everything is written. So we write down to memorize. So how are you going to write down the notes? However it helps you to memorize. So when you want to memorize something, maybe you want to make it easier for yourself, so you can shorten it, summarize it, however you want to do it. So everyone has their own style. There is no particular way, specific way, but there are ways that can be more beneficial than others. There are some ground rules too, scholars they mention. And a lot of this you can find in the book, Shaykh Salih al-Shaykh, Hafidhullah Ta'ala. I'm going to cite him today too. Ma'ali Shaykh, a senior scholar, he has a book, The Student Knowledge in his books. It's in English. It's a lecture he gave. It's translated in PDF. The Student of Knowledge and his books. He teaches you there how to write the notes. Some ulama used to use a circle in the middle of the page, triangle, In the middle of the page, they put the matan in there, then around it, they put the sharh or the hawashi. Imagine that. Back in the day, sometimes you see the knowledge sometimes you see an old book is triangular. What's going on here? The matan was sharh. They have a system, right? Today, we have advantage. We have these tablets. Then we use some color, today, with scholars are using tasjir, right? We call diagramming and mind mapping. Scholars today are using it. So tasjir is a beneficial way. You make a chart, break it down, and you can stick with it. So you do whatever you need to do to memorize it. But some ground rules, use big and clear writing. Scholars advise make it big and clear. Why? So that you can clearly see it. And when you get older or later you want to review it, it's not smudged or it's too hard to read. So some ulama, that's why they disadvise writing the notes between the lines. Because it's so hard to read. Right? Especially later on, someone gets the book, you can't benefit because no one knows what you wrote. Even sometimes you don't know what you wrote. Right? That's a shame, right? Because you're trying to get a benefit, you don't know what's in there. So write big and clear. And again, some of the ulama, they mentioned from experience that they wrote things down and they couldn't decipher it later. And we mentioned before, Shaykh Islam ibn Taymiyyah, rahimahullah, writing was very fast. So a lot of his notes were hard to read. Only one of his students used to decipher for him. Ibn Rushayyid, he's the one, if you need to read, he'll get the book, he'll get the paper, he knows what Ibn Taymiyyah is writing. Everybody else couldn't read it. So the reason why is it's important for us to write clear because maybe that book can become something someone takes from you, benefits. Number 2, write down the benefits you need to keep, not the ones you already know. If you know something, you don't have to write it down, you already know it. You write down what you don't know or what you want to know. Hence, your notebook can be a carbon copy of the book. Some people write the whole book over. I mean, if you want to memorize it, that's a good way. But if you're going to print a new copy, there's a new tab'ah already available. You don't need your copy. Some people, they just copy everything down. I mean, it's not the ideal way. You want to write down what you need. So what you do, mukhtarat, selections, a little bit here. And you can see the ulama, you can see their own books. Their notebooks are like this. Shaykh Ibn Uthaymeen has 3 of them. مختارات إعلام موقعين. Notes on the kitab إعلام موقعين وصول فقه ابن القيم. It's like this book, maybe like 100, 200 pages. His notes as he reads the book. So he puts the date he started and he used to read the book and writes this down. So published, you can see it. It's not very long. That's Ibn Uthaymeen's own notes. When he used to read the book, he takes the benefit, he puts the page number, and he put where he got it from. And today it's published. We're reading it. Again, it's a great benefit, right? If you read Ibn Uthaymeen's notes, right? Talk about study notes. Right? That's a saves a lot of time. He has another one, Zad Ma'ad, same thing. And this one, I think he had it, him and his friends got together to read. So they read the book and they write down some things. You see, the ulama used to do that too. They used to benefit one another. And a third one he has is like Turuq Hukamiyya, Ibn Qayyim's book on governance. So again, notes, he summarized. Beautiful, right? So you can see what he's writing down is, okay, Ibn Qayyim argues this, volume 1, page this. In the beginning of the book, it tells you what print he's using and what year he started. So that way you can see, okay, because you're not going to go back and read the book again. So some of the ulama, what they do, they put even the front cover, in the front cover, they put a piece of paper and they write down everything in the book they need. So it becomes like, if I have to review the book, I open the front cover. I don't open the rest of it. And Shaykh Salah Shaykh, he talks about that too. Writing in the back, some see the back of the book, sometimes they have empty pages. That's what it's for. You write down all your notes, that's it. And again, the last one, you organize your notes in a way that's easy to retrieve them. So some people like to put bookmarks, some people like to put, those markers. Again, every scholar has a preference and something they don't like. Again, it all goes back to what's easy for you. But the goal is you need to have that something to write down. And later, when all these notes you're writing, you want to have a book where it's going to be a master copy for the particular subject. So for example, for Tawheed, Kitab al-Tawheed, or Fath al-Majid, something like this is going to be your master copy. This is your book. Tawheed, whenever you want to study Hadith Tawheed, you go to Kitab al-Tawheed and its explanation. So you get that book and you put all your notes on that book. So then whenever you read Tawheed, you only have one book you have to review. For Aqidah, some people use Tahawiyya or Wasatiyya, that's Mamarji', that's it. I go back to there. Or Sharh Tahawiyya. I mean, I'm talking about someone who finished the whole curriculum now. He wants to have one book, he can review all his studies. Like in university, you finish the whole 4 years. Okay, which notes is going to be your notebook? So Islamic studies, you finish all the years. Okay, at the end I have one book. I take all my old previous notes, I put it back onto that book. So that will be my master copy for the rest of my life. I just review that book. And you see how that saves time? So for us today, it's just writing it down on the computer or the tablet so you can search it whenever you need it. But we're going to see later, when you have everything written down, that's just the first step. The next step, you have to actually start reviewing it. Otherwise, it's not going to benefit you. So for some systems, some people would like to do, they put the title. Preference, this is what I like to do. Just put the title of what you're looking for, or what you're trying to write down. So the benefit, the nuqta, what's the benefit? then the quote that you're trying to benefit from, and then the source. And the source is important. Why? So you can go back to it later. So in case someone says, where did you get it from? You say, 1 second, it's here. And that way, so you have the benefit, the point you want to summarize, what you're trying to prove. And number 2, the quote itself, because that's what you're looking for, the beautiful quote, the ayah, or the hadith that came across is so interesting, and then the source. So if you forget even what's written down, at least you have the source, you can go back to it. And some people like to put the source with the page number, or the source with the print number, print type, so if they have to find it again, they'll find it. Because again, prints are different, right? Sometimes you can't. The worst thing is something's in a book and you can't find it. You know it's there, but you don't know what page it is. So you can't remember again. So now you're forced to start reading the book. That's sad. Or of course you're going to use Shamila. That's cheating, but that's the way out of it. When you forget, use Shamila. Even though Shamila can be wrong, but at least I want to find out what chapter is in. So the reason why this is useful, at least your notebook then is going to be like that. If it's a commentary on top of the book you're reading, then you organize it in the chapters. You're reading chapter this, okay, I have the chapter equivalent chapter, some notes. So you make sure your notebook then is useful. Many people, when they're writing the notebooks, after a time, they're not going to review it. Their goal is to review it. And so when you take down what you need, not what you don't need, and then those fawaid, you can memorize them because they're not that many. And when you review them, later on, when you want to teach that book, or you want to share something in the book, you just get that notebook out and say, look, let me show you some nice benefits I found. Some notebooks are just in references to other places they're found. So they're not actually, they don't write the quotes. They just say, check that book, check this book for this issue, check that book. So it's like ihalat, just shows you where to look, reference sheet. And that's also beneficial. Why? Because later you can just go back and find them. Especially when you're doing a research, you have that reference. Scholars, they work a lot on this because that will help you later. Ultimately, the benefit behind all of this is for a student to have somewhere to record their notes and hopefully commit them to memory, or at the very least be able to review them when needed. Which means it has to be review lessons. And scholars therefore say when it comes to attending the class, there are three parts. Pre-lesson, during the lesson, and post-lesson. Every time you come to a dars, it's something you did before you came, something you do when you're in the dars, something you do after you finish. And the ulama, they mentioned this because this is how you study. Just like we know today, in any academic class, you have the before, you do the pre-reading, in the class, and then post. But that's serious. Talib al-ilm is no different. In fact, it's more serious because what you're studying means to be very good for you because you have to memorize it properly, understand it properly. So before you come to class, some scholars recommend you review the matan, the text that you're about to study. Just read it over. It helps you understand the scope of what you're going to look at. It may also help you to know how much that subject will be or what kind of area it's going to cover. You can also read the explanation of it. So for example, if there's going to be Aqeedah class, Kitab al-Tawheed, and this week you're going to do this chapter, you read that chapter at home, you read the Sharh of the Ibn Uthaymeen or any other Shaykh you want, so you have a general understanding. Then you come to the class, the Shaykh will give you more. So what you take from the class will be different because you already have a gist. You're not going to be lost. Like, Shaykh, what's the definition, this, that? You already did homework. I know the basics. I'm looking for some extra. And this was mentioned by some of the greatest scholars like Ibn Badran al-Hanbali in his Madkhal ila Madhhab Imam Ahmad, page 489. And in the past, brothers, they didn't even have what we have. In the past, the student would bring his matan, he would first read it, then he'll go and read to the Shaykh the matan. And the Shaykh would then do ta'liq or read it to him, the explanation, and he'll write it down. You can see some places back home or Africa and the Middle East, they do that. Shaykh, you bring the matan to Shaykh, you read to him. When you read to him, then he's going to read you the explanation. This means that, this means this, and you're writing down. And then you go home and you review that. So that's the lesson. That's it. The whole class is done. That's all he's going to do. Maybe one chapter, or maybe you did one page, and then you go back. So the reason why you have to read it beforehand, so you read the text properly. You're not going to read it wrong. And then you can also be able to know what he's going to explain. So during the class now, you have to sit down and the etiquette, obviously adhering to etiquette of the Majalis al-Ilm, right? The brother Fajr al-Masari, he already taught us on Torn Da'wah, the Imam Sa'di's Risala about the etiquette of seeking knowledge and sitting with the teacher and student. So you come to the class like a proper student. You're taking notes during the class. You ask questions whenever you don't understand something. That's also very important. Asking questions helps you to learn. And the quality of the question is better, you get the better answer. So the person who asks the basic questions, it means maybe he didn't review. But the student, more higher level student, may ask a better question because he did pre-reading. So he knows, he says, Shaykh, I have a problem with this issue, I need to know that. So you have to come to class, ask questions. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, إِنَّمَا الشَّفِيُّ عِيِّ سُؤَالٍ. The cure for ignorance is questioning. Hadith Sahih Sunan Abi Dawud. So asking questions is good. It's one of the pathways to gain knowledge. Ask and don't be shy. But what you don't want to do, come to class, you're not engaged, you don't ask anything, you're not writing anything, because later you're going to just fall asleep. And talab al-ilm is ibadah. It's ibadah. Now the post, when you finish the class, now you have all these things written down. Time you pick a partner, a classmate. You're going to review the knowledge together. It doesn't have to be directly after. It could be during the week, whatever you want. And you're going to do a mudhakara, muraja'a, review. And this is the part where knowledge gets solidified. This is the part where knowledge gets from the class to the heart. Mudhakara, something they call ardu ilm, you're presenting. And what you do is that you pick a partner, someone who's serious, so obviously who's doing talab, seeking knowledge too. And you could be small groups. Scholars say if you're going to do a group, it has to be small. Ibn Uthaymeen in Kitab al-Ilm mentions this. It can't be a big group. Right? So we know groups, usually 3 or 4, that's big enough. Big groups going to get out of hand. Small, one-on-one is better, 2 people, for example. And then they just review. Okay, what about this? He said this. What does it mean? We looked at that. What does that mean? What it proved? Do you remember? So you just exchange a question with one another to review knowledge. When they get stuck, they can look at their notes. Or one person will read the notes, the other person will mention what he remembered. So they just try to benefit from this. This is the part where the knowledge gets into the heart. And if you don't have anyone to study with, then you study by yourself. It's okay. You have a kitab, you open the kitab, you ask yourself questions. Now look at the example of that. So Imam Az-Zarnuji, rahimahullah, in Ta'aleem al-Muta'allim, he writes, page 16, as with choosing a partner, then it's necessary to choose a diligent, devout person who is upright in his character, and he should flee from a lazy person or one who's negligent, one who talks too much or is corrupt or is a troublemaker. Some people just kind of bring you down, right? They're supposed to review and you're just making jokes, and that's not, it's not allowed to do that, right? This is the class where you're trying to review the knowledge. And the way you review it is the way you're going to remember it, right? So the review is the hard part. That's the part you got to do by yourself or with your partner. So again, if you don't have a review partner, you can still review the knowledge. You can still review it by opening the book and the notes you take it and just reading out loud to yourself or asking yourself questions. We'll look at some examples in a second. And with that is committing to memory whatever you can of it, either exactly what you memorized, learned, or if you can't do that, then you have the tasawwur, the understanding in general. The most important thing is sawab, correctness. Hifd it's fantastic. That's what is the best and the greatest assurance. You know exactly what you know, the ayah, the hadith, the point. But if you don't remember those for whatever reason, at least you know the general idea and how to go back. And the reason why this is important, brothers and sisters, is that when it comes to knowledge, there's different levels of it, and the most important is to have the capacity to be knowledgeable. The quwwah that you're looking for, the capacity, malakatul ilm, having the ability to know what you know. This is what we're trying to achieve, the skill set. So as we'll see, that not everybody memorizes everything, and some people memorize better than others, but the idea is the end, you want to do as much as you can, combining understanding with memory. That's the most important. Well, you have many things memorized, but you don't know the conclusions. And the difference between the people is that some people, they spend more time trying to understand and break things down, especially complicated topics. Let's look at an example. Shaykh Salih al-Shaykh Abdul Ta'ala gives us a good example at how to get the knowledge strong in your heart and mind. And he has a book, it's called Tariq al-Nabugh al-Ilmi, the path to proficiency in knowledge. And this kitab is like a series of lectures he gave, and he gives amazing insights. Shaykh Salih al-Shaykh, brothers and sisters, if we don't know, he's Ma'ali Shaykh, one of the most knowledgeable scholars in the whole Saudiya, among the whole Muslim world, amongst the most knowledgeable. And he's also a Shaykh who the ulama they go back to. He's considered a senior scholar. And you could tell just by his books and his material how much knowledge he has. Again, he's an engineer also, background. So he has that knowledge, ilm dunya he knows. And you can tell the knowledge he has. He has a majlis, it's called Majlis Kitab, or reading from his book of Fawaid. He has a notebook he wrote years ago when he's a young man. He's just reading the Fawaid. You can't even believe it, right, what he's mentioning. Things that he read this, I mentioned this, and amazing benefits. Absolutely. He has the biggest library in the Muslim amongst Saudi Arabia. He knows so many things, Sheikh. But he's also very good at explaining these complicated topics and also how to learn properly. Again, if we're going to take his advice, he's a good person to take his advice. He talks about your question. How does a student know that they have perfected a particular chapter? How do you know that? If, for example, you studied a chapter, fiqh, hadith, aqidah, fiqh, nahu, whatever. How do you know it? He says, well, you're going to know it if you can express that particular chapter or that knowledge in the chapter properly in a manner which is knowledge-based, not knowledge-based. In a knowledge-based way, you can explain the issue and you express it without making a mistake. If you do, like in terms of you mixed up the information or you expressed it in a way that's not academic, it's not you don't know it. And so he gives an example. He said, look, Shaykh Islam Ibn Taymiyyah in the beginning of Wasatiyya, he writes, هذا اعتقاد فرقة الناجية من أهل السنة والجماعة. It's the beginning of the book after the Hamdulillah. Or Basmala, Ibn Taymiyyah says this book is the belief of the فرقة الناجية, أهل السنة والجماعة. The Shaykh says, when you want to review the book, you ask yourself the question, what's the فرقة الناجية? So he explained it. So how are you going to explain it? To yourself, you're going to explain it the way the ulama explain it. So if you can explain it the way they do it in your own words, but you got the gist of what they say, then you know it. But if you explain it your own way, and you're not getting to what they're saying, then you don't know it. So how you know what you know? When the scholars explain things, what do? They break into categories, or they define a word, or they bring a proof. Just like the explanation, whatever you took, you take it down like that. So ultimately, it's like notes. Okay, Firqatun Najiyah, definition, then proof, then categories, then the differences between this and other groups. That's it. So summary. That means someone studied something. If you go to a layperson and say, what's Firqatun Najiyah? Either you say, I don't know, or he'll say safe sect. Okay, safe sect, what does that mean? You can't go beyond. That means you don't know it. So most of us, the problem we may have is that if you can tell someone translation, that's just the beginning. Because that's not even ta'rif ilmi, that's just the translation. And you notice then, when people ask you a question, what are you trying to get them to know? What does this mean? What is the importance of this? You're trying to do what the scholars did. When the scholars explain it, they don't just say, Fiqh Najiyah is the safe sect. Move on. Like, who's the safe sect? What are the qualities? You know, the questions that come to someone's head. So most of us, we notice that if you take these definitions, you study them, you have a particular answer. If you didn't study it, you wouldn't have that answer. Then he gives another example. He says, for example, let's take the example of sifat. You're studying attributes of Allah. Sifatul ulu lillah. Allah's attribute of loftiness. Wal istiwa al arsh. And Allah's ascending over the throne. You study that issue in the Wasatiyya, then you explain it to yourself. What is it? What does Ahlul Sunnah Jama'ah believe about Allah's loftiness and ascending over the throne? What is the proof for it? What Ahlul Bid'ah they say about it? Why they're wrong? There's levels, right? But the point is you explain to yourself whatever you studied. If you can explain to yourself as you studied without the book, opening the book, then you know it. And so another way to know is that someone down the street just pulled you on the side and asked you out of nowhere. Or someone told you, roll down your window and say, what's Firqatun Najiyah? You're going to say, Bismillah, I got it. That's when you know something. But if you're going to be like, 1 second, let me get my notebook, no, what is this? Especially something like that's basic. Because again, if someone detailed, you say, 1 second, let me park my car. Because it's really detailed. If someone asks you something like basic, and you say, oh, I don't remember, you see, then you start realizing everything I'm supposed to know, I don't remember. And what I don't know, I don't know. So it looks bad, right? So it looks like everything I don't know. And most of the time you notice that when it comes to review and memorizing, it's like a daily activity. You do it by yourself. So the person who can answer a question, how does he know the answer? He already prepared for the answer. I was waiting for someone like you to ask me that. That's what it is. And the mashayikh, you notice, when you see them in the fatwa, when they're doing the fatwa live, they have no paper, no pen. Why? Because he studied this how many times? What do you think? Maybe he wrote a whole book on this. You just go ahead. And he knows, and you can tell, subhanAllah, that they're not just waiting for you to answer. He studied it so that he can prepare for an answer. So that's another way to help you. How would you, the way you want to answer it, study like that. That's a very easy way to help. So example, when people try to ask you a question, what are they really looking for? 2 things. Conclusion, wa adillah, dalil. This is haram, wa qala Allah, qala Rasul, that's it. That guy, the Prophet is going to say, Jazakallah khair, and that's enough. He's not going to say, how you know that's proof? He's not going to, he doesn't know that. And most people won't even ask for proof. They just want the conclusion. So if you know these 2, that's very beneficial. And if you don't remember the evidence, at least you can tell him that there is a hadith, there's this. And that's beneficial because then it shortens your list of what you have to commit to memory. But the hard part is, how many issues are there? How many things I have to commit to memory? So the beginning, it's just like, okay, the basics. And when something's advanced, I don't know it, that's okay. So let's take a look at this example. Shaykh said, Firqatun Najiyah. Who wants to explain Firqatun Najiyah? What is it? Just a mudakara here. Everyone knows Firqatun Najiyah, hopefully. Well, so what does it mean? Someone asks, what's Firqatun Najiyah? How are we going to explain to the person that term? And we're going to read from Shaykh Salih Shaykh's book. He actually explains it. But before going there, let's just ask ourselves that question. How would we explain that to someone to ask us without just saying it's a safe sect? Good, so it's another definition or synonym for the terms like Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah or Ahlul Athar, Ta'if al-Mansura. These are all synonyms. Ahlul Sunnah, Salafiyya, all mean the same thing. Good. Now someone say, where do you get it from? That's probably the question. Where does it come from? How are we going to answer that? Good. The hadith was 72 sects. That's the asr. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam told us it's going to be ستفترق هذه أمة breaking to 73 فرقة, 73 groups. كلها في النار إلا واحدة. So that's why they're called in saved sects, saved from the hellfire. And other groups are under the threat of the hellfire. That's why it's called saved sect. And other groups are called the destroyed groups, or the ones who are under threat. Very key word. Because we're not the Khawarij, Mu'tazila. We're not going to say you're going to Jahannam. You're تحت وعيد Allah, Allah's threat. So now you approve the group people. There's a group that's saved and a group that's not. So that's the first important thing. Someone may say, where did it come from? Example, some people, they never heard this, right? Many people. So they say, what is the saved sect? It's hadith. Hadith is mutawatir. It's like, subhanAllah. Today you have some people who, when they bring them this hadith, they think the hadith is da'if. That's the first thing. Someone say, I heard the hadith is da'if. How are we going to answer them? Shaykh, it's mutawatir. I mean, hadith da'if. Is this hadith da'if? What hadith sahih? Right? You got to tell them, is this hadith da'if? Which one is sahih to you? It's very important because Al-Bid'ah, they do a lot of business trying to weaken this hadith. They'll say, the last part is da'if. And who's shaykh? Which imam? Tell me. So next time someone tells you hadith da'if, tell them, which muhaddith? Which one? When as soon as you hear he's going to mention some nobody, it's like, I knew it. They're going to mention some nobody who's not a muhaddith. Because they're going to bring you some guys today's time. You can tell me 35 muhaddithun said sahih. More than 35, brothers. From the time of Salaf down. You didn't tell me it's weak? You see, this is important. Today someone's going to come and heard it's da'if. This is what they're telling them on YouTube. This is what they're telling them. So Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, when he told us this hadith, mutawatir. Tayyib. And also in the hadith he mentions who they are, their quality. What's their qualities? How do we know someone's in saved sect? It's the same hadith. There's additional wording. What's the wording say? Those upon my way and my companions. Very important. That's the quality someone wants. Because the next question someone's going to ask you, how do you know who's the saved sect? Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, all the paths are hellfire illa wahida. Man kana ala mithli ma ana alayhi al-yawm ashabi. This wording, this is one they say is weak. No, it's not. Whoever follows my way and what are my companions upon. Very important. So, anyone who's following this way, he's firqat al-najiyah, Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. Whoever doesn't, he's not from Ahl Sunnah, he's not firqat al-najiyah. What else can we benefit from the word? Firqat al-najiyah. How many groups? Is it firqat al-najiyah or firqat al-najiyah? Only one. There we go. So when someone comes and say, Asha'ira ma tuli firqat al-najiyah, firqat al-wahida, ta'ifat al-mansura, ta'ifa. He didn't say ta'if. So that destroys the argument. Because most of the latter scholars say, Ahl Sunnah Jama'ah 3, Asha'ira, ma tuli Ahl Sunnah. No. Nabi sallallahu said, firqatun nadi, firqa, kullaha, finnar ila wahida, wahid, right? Wahid is qat'i, it doesn't mean two, right? So why I'm saying this? Because people say, you know who they are, the Asha'ira. No, akhi, kullaha finnar ila wahida, makan mithl alayhi yawm ashabi, they're not following it. Or they'll say all three groups. Nabi sallallahu said group, not groups. Ta'if the Mansura, one group. Why is it important, this wording? That's the one that most people are going to talk to you about. I heard it's not just the Salafis. Salafis, Asharis, not Allah. Come on, let's go to the hadith. Nabi sallallahu, what did he say? Very important. What does Naji even mean? That's another part. Saved or salvation. Now the question is, saved from what? Hellfire. Other groups are going to Jahannam. Very common question. You're going to say, Kullaha fin nar? Everyone's going to Jahannam? How can you say everyone's going to Jahannam? Most people, that's what they're going to tell you. How dare you say everyone's going to Jahannam? I didn't say they're going to Jahannam. Nabi sallallahu said, first of all. And second, I said they're heading towards Jahannam. I didn't say they're going to Jahannam. So how do we answer that? This is a part many Muslims misunderstood. And the lay person, why they reject the hadith, they think it's wrong because you're saying the whole ummah, everybody's going to Jahannam. First of all, everybody's not Ahl Dalala. Okay? So what is this? What kind of understanding do you have? Everybody's Ash'ari? Come on. This is what they want us to believe. No. We tell them, look, Nabi sallallahu said all the paths are going there. But we never said they're going to Jahannam, but underneath the threat of Jahannam. Firqatul Naji means if you're part of following this methodology, you're more likely, we hope from Allah, more likely that you'll be forgiven. But that doesn't mean you don't have to have good deeds, you have to do good, stay from haram. So the Shaykh Salih mentioned Najiyah has to do with Akhirah. Firqatul Najiyah min nar. Ta'if Mansura, they're Mansur fi dunya. Fa'idah. Ahl Sunnah are supporting dunya wal Akhirah. Akhirah, go to Jannah, more likely to go. And of course, some will go directly. And then the Mansura, the other hadith talks about Ta'if Mansura, fi dunya, Allah will aid them. And someone say, how is Allah aiding us when the Sunnah minority? Shaykh Ibn Taymiyyah says, aid doesn't always mean with the weaponry. They also aided with the adillah. That's why Sunnah, they're upon haqq, no matter where they are. And we also know that this hadith teaches us that these two qualities, one is called the saved sect, one is called the supporter group, two different descriptions for two different angles. It's beautiful, right? There's no contradiction. So someone say Ahl Sunnah, again, another angle. And some now ask the question, okay, the other groups, what's their hal then? What's the situation? How do we answer that? And that's the question that most people are going to ask you. If you're saying that the other groups are heading to hellfire, can they go to Jannah? And the answer is yes. And how do we answer that? Well, someone's following a wrong group. If he's still a Muslim, he can still go to Jannah, right? So he can be saved, but he also can be likely punished. He's underneath the threat. So threats, what do we mean? يُعَذِّبُ مَنْ يَشَاءُ وَيَغْفِرُ لِمَنْ يَشَاءُ. Allah may punish them, Allah may forgive them. So how can they be forgiven? This is the question that some people, they may ask. For example, scholars say that the person who is from a misguided group, we're not saying he's going to Jahannam, guaranteed. Some of them, yes, they may, and some of them more likely so, and some of them are forgiven the ignorance in levels and groups. But scholars explain the other groups, if they, for example, they did lots of good deeds, their good deeds can outweigh even their mistaken aqeedah, methodology. I can forgive them for that. Or, for example, they were ignorant, right? There's also that, right? So we have to understand the understanding of Ahlul Sunnah Jama'ah. When we say they're going to Jahannam, the path is going there. We're not condemning everybody in there. So Ahlul Bid'ah can be saved for other reasons. That's a fa'idah Shaykh Islam Ibn Taymiyyah also mentioned. The ulama all understand this. We don't say the Muslim are going to Jahannam. We're just saying that they're under the threat of Allah. And that's already scary because we know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is iqab, severe punishment. So, brother and sister, see this explanation we just gave? That's the kind of explanation you should be giving if someone were to ask you that. Right? So the other groups, they can be safe from the hellfire for other reasons, but they're under the threat of Allah, and that's why it's already dangerous and misguided. Otherwise, at Sunnah Jama'ah, we don't condemn to Jahannam. إلا كافر وتفر كافر, right? Everyone else under تحت مشيئة الله من قال لا إله إلا الله دخل الجنة. So we know this. But if you ask a Khariji, say, that's it, he's in Jahannam. He's been there. He's going there and there's no hope. So that's them, that's not us. So the explanation we just gave, Shaykh explains this. But the summary of this would mean you know this term properly, right? Because you studied it. If you didn't study the term, you wouldn't be able to give those kind of details, right? You would probably just be giving either a very summarized one, or maybe you will know what the hadith is, right? So the benefit we take from that is it explains all the different questions that will come under it. So you can also study it this way. So if you want to give an answer this way, you have to study that way. So when you write down your notes, where they are, right? How do they go? What's their terminology? What's the name? Where they came from? What does Najiyah mean compared to the word Ta'if in the surah? What about other groups? Why is only one group? You write your notes down like that, then you memorize it. So when someone asks you 1, 2, 3, you're going to bring it down like this. And the reason why you know it like this, because I wrote it down like this. And that person who benefit from it, benefit in a nice way. And sometimes you don't have to give the whole answer. You give this a little bit, sufficient. You want more here. And sometimes you know that I can't give the person the whole explanation. So maybe I'm going to get the name of the book where it's there. So maybe I say, you want to read something? Go to this book, this page, forget it. That's another benefit writing notes, because you can share a source later, follow up with somebody. Tayyib, brothers, all of this is to help us to understand that when you're studying, this is what we're supposed to be doing. We'll finish one more thing, that the ultimate goal then for a student is to continuously be reviewing and learning what they memorized and what they write down in the class, so that the knowledge can be alive with them all the time wherever they're going. And we should also pay attention to the fact that if we don't review, that's afatul ilm. That's one of the ways the knowledge disappears. Imam Zuhri, rahimahullah, in Sunan Darimi, Imam Zuhri said, afatul ilm, the afa means the affliction of knowledge, is 2 things: nisyan, forgetfulness, wa tarkul mudhakara. So 2 things are the destruction of knowledge: nisyan, forgetfulness. You can't really help that, right? Because we're human beings, we forget. Any insan. But the second one, that's on you. Tark mudhakara. That's me and you forgetting to review, and we're not reviewing properly. And so the benefit we take from this is that some things you're going to forget, and some things you forgot because you didn't review. You're telling yourself, I forgot, but no, you didn't review. That's what it is. And this is important. Why? Because ultimately we want to retain the knowledge, because ilm is supposed to go with us wherever we are. That means it's juhud, brothers. Some kind of effort that's going there, because the khair that you can bring from this, but this knowledge that you memorize and learning, it's tremendous. People's life can be saved. You can answer, literally, some questions are life and death. Some questions are saving people money. Some questions getting people here. Some questions are the questions of the hour. You need the answer, or I found it from somewhere I can share with people. But also we have to be careful that we don't review the knowledge. We write down the notes, we put it in our shelf, we record the class, we never listen to it. And later, then the time is now, or the time comes for you to answer a question, you say, I don't know. And people will say, what kind of talib ilm are you? What were you doing all this time? Sitting in the class. If anyone's going to know, it's going to be you, and you don't know. So then people are going to also feel bad and feel the student knowledge are weak. Whereas a person who studies properly understands the responsibility that will come from the knowledge. And again, levels, you could know where to find it, how to get it, and we'll talk about the next week. We'll also talk about next week memorization, which is also important. How do you memorize? And what are the things you should be memorizing? And the things that are going to help you memorization. Because memorization also, there are techniques and there's tips. I'll end with this much, and then we'll go to the board after. Everyone has any quick questions? Yeah. So the kitab we're reading from, the benefit, الطريق إلى نبوغ العلم. So the path towards expertise. But nubugh literally means like to become a very high level, right? Like a genius or like a high level knowledgeable person. So it's a really good book because he gives a lot of amazing advice in there. And it's just like different lectures the Shaykh gave and different talks. And there he has, in the beginning of the book, so I was mentioning some of that, he has منهجية, and then there he talks about كيفية التأصيل والتدرج في علم التوحيد, علم الحديث, تأصيل الفقه, طريق تطبيق نحوي. Right? It's a lot of great benefits to show you how to do it. And which books are the best of the best. Like this book, this is the book. For example, in there he says, the Kitab al-Sihah of Jawhari is the Bukhari of the books of grammar, like dictionaries. It's like Bukhari for the dictionaries. Because scholars differ. What's the best Arabic dictionary? So he says this Kitab Sihah, that's like the Bukhari for the Suyuti said that. So this kind of benefits are like literally saving you a lot. I mean, if anyone's going to tell us, it's going to be him, right? He knows. But this also shows you that extra applicable part, this is very beneficial book. So whoever can read Arabic, they can refer to that book, and you'll benefit tremendously from it. Anyone else have any questions? Yeah. موسوعة كويتية. This book, brothers asking between this book and book like Mughni. Mughni is a Hanbali book, but it's not a Hanbali book. It's the last book in the Hanbali tradition. It is the encyclopedia. It's not a Hanbali book. Mughni ibn Qudama is the encyclopedia. So it covers every madhab. So it has khilaf within the madhab. Right, so he brings you this version, that version is called khilaf al-nazil or khilaf al-adi. He brings you the differences outside the madhab. So Mughni is like one of the 4 books, the whole fiqh is there. But Mawsu'a Fiqhiyya is a contemporary scholars in Kuwait. For years they compiled this. It's like an encyclopedia, NFD, of every subject of knowledge of fiqh underneath topics. So it's like a really summarized, using Mughni other books. It covers the whole fiqh from 4 madhabs and others. So it's very beneficial. So it's different because the summary, it's a newer style, and it's also obviously a lot easier to read. Or Mughni is an origin book. This book is like a secondary, supplementary to it. So students, usually some of them, when they want to study fiqh topics, to get an overview, they go there. And we'll see later when you're studying fiqh, that's one of the resources for research. And so there's books for research. The Mughni is also a reference book. And again, people used to study Mughni too. But yes, that Mawsu'a Fiqhiyya is a reference book. You want to study topics, salah, adhan, whatever. And the small books and topics and the big ones. That's the difference, yeah. So I mean, we was asking, like some of the ulama al-hadith, they argue that studying a madhab, with just studying fiqh through madhab, came in the 4th century, which is true. This is a period after the asr, the period of the riwayah. Hadith sciences became more stabilized. Hadith, maybe some scholars say ilm al-riwayah ended in the 5th century, the time period where narrations were being done by asanid. So obviously fiqh becomes codified as the periods go on. So we start off with the asr, the time period of wahi. Then we move in the time period of narrations, right, where the hadith and all the explanations in the Quran are written and narrated. Then we have codifications, where these are being codified. So of course, fiqh comes later, but fiqh is just a wasila. The madhabs, they didn't come to take away from the Quran and Sunnah. Yes, people are fanatical. No one agrees to this. We're talking about as a means to study. So of course, if someone says preferable to the hadith, nobody denies that. That's another way of doing it. The problem is that what's the advantage of both? You study from the fiqh, from hadith, you learn the evidences, but you might not be able to extract as many evidences or masail directly from it, because some of the masail, like I said, are not from the hadith. So what happens? So some of the brothers, when they study Bulugh al-Maram, for example, it depends on which sharh you're going to study, how many masail you can get from. So if you compare some of the scholars, they did both. Ibn Uthaymin has sharh Mumti', which is explanation of Zad al-Mustaqni', and he has sharh Bulugh al-Maram, both hadith and fiqh. When you look at the two, you can see that the stuff he says in sharh Mumti' is not there in the Bulugh. Maybe he does bring it because he always mentions the extra. So the benefit we take is that both paths will get you somewhere. This one helps you understand the hadith, this one helps you understand the issues. So there's no contradiction. And the fuqaha, they knew both. Right? Obviously, they didn't have a matan, but they were teaching, they had what we call a set of knowledge they reported from their scholars. So the benefit we take is that we shouldn't deny that studying fiqh, the traditional way, will not make you help you. For some people, the problem though is that when they study madhab, they don't get out of it. They start with it. So the scholars, how they bridge the gap. The books of fiqh or manuals or indexes, and the hadith are the evidences. So that's the best approach. So you take okay, what is the issue I need to know? Issue number one, okay, the hadith, this is the proof for it. So the index, because we need to know what the masail are. So for example, some issues, they're not very clear in the hadith. But if you look at the book of fiqh, it says this is the issue. Okay, now I know the issue. And what may also happen is that let's say I'm studying a hadith book, I never got to that issue. And you're like, oh, I never heard that. And then you say it's wrong. It's like, no, the beginner will say, hey, it's here. But he won't be able to prove it, and you wouldn't know what it was. So that's often what happens, right? Someone, what's your proof? Guys have no proof. And they'd be like, don't you know this? Like, I don't know this. So both of you guys talking over each other because you don't know what's in the fiqh book, so he doesn't know that dillah. So I believe combining is very important. Some of the ulama, they're doing this. Again, it's all about side. Again, the ghaya is the ilm, the knowledge. So there shouldn't be too much strictness. Yes. So fiqh al-ibadat is, so we said one of them is Sheikh Salih Fawzan's fiqh summary. That's one of them. And then there's other ones that are more like higher level for comparative fiqh. But we mentioned that one. We mentioned the conditions of prayer, as-salah, Sheikh Sulaymaan Abdul Wahab. And we mentioned also Natural Blood of Sheikh Uthaymin. These are books we mentioned. There are other books, but again, like this will give you what you need of tahara and salah. I think these are and these are all English. All these books are available in English. Another book for someone who's really beginner, Durus al-Muhimma, Sheikh bin Baz. Right, the important lesson, Sheikh bin Baz, excellent, right? So the whole book is just designed to teach you Tawheed, Aqidah, Salah, Tahara, Jama'ah, Janazah, and Tafsir Surah Al-Nas, Zilzal. That's it. That's like a curriculum for the beginner or new Muslim. That's it. You read the whole book. Okay, you're a Muslim practicing, you know your basics. And that's why Sheikh spent his whole life on that book, trying to make it good. It's a beautiful book. People underestimate it. It's very nice, right? Again, it's just lists. List one, everything you need. So that's another book. Someone just like, I just want to know the basics. So read this book. Anyone have any questions? Inshallah, otherwise, yes? So at the beginning, as I was asking, should we study Arabic first and do these books? So at the beginning, you need to know the basic knowledge every day and night. So you need to know the Tahara, Salah, no matter what language you speak. Even if you're mute. Right, you have to know this. So the problem comes to Arabic. How long does it take? Take it 2 years or 3 years. Depends on your study. Some people take a lifetime. So what are you gonna do in the meantime, right? So some knowledge you cannot, like as ours talking or as we're speaking, you have to know it. Example: if someone becomes Muslim right now, what's wajib on them? To learn Salat al-Fajr. Fajr is coming. The Ulama say he has to learn right now how to pray Fajr to get ready for Fajr. So the same thing. If today you suddenly became a new Muslim or better Muslim. Right now, what do I need to know? Okay, give me the basics. That's how we say, at least cover this. Then, and we'll look at Arabic next week as well. Then we can go around. I can do extra. And you can do multiple lessons. But what's happening today is that somebody cannot say that I'm a beginner student or a beginner Muslim. I don't know what I have to know, and I'm studying something, but I don't need to know yet. See, prioritization. Imagine someone studying something extra we didn't talk about yet, and yet the basics he doesn't know. If he dies today, he's in big trouble, right? So that's, I think about what do I have to know now? Get the Tawheed down, basics, the Aqidah basics, Tahara, Salah basics. Then, now you can say, okay. And remember, in the past, scholars also talked about student knowledge who started when he was older versus younger. Today, most of us starting past 18. I think most people get the Hidayah at 20. Allahu A'lam, right? That's my estimation nowadays. I think that's the period of wa'i, when the lock opens here. Right? Some of the scholars, like Ibn Jawzi and Sayyid al-Khatir, another book, he said that if someone's 20 years old and he's not practicing, that's the guy when he's finished. Because that time maybe they die younger. Ask if he got to 20, there's hope. Inshallah, he's going to turn around. SubhanAllah. So most of us were way late. Why? Because in the past, the guys do the Quran classes 4, 5, 6, 7. He's already memorized the Quran. Most of it, that's the problem we have now. And that's what the ulama, when they mentioned time in Salaf about studying Quran first, Shaykh Albani's advice, rahimahullah, was if you're 18 or older, start with what you need to know, then you can study the Quran. Because you're already late. We know the latecomer is not like the first row. You're late, brother. You gotta first cover this, and then if us we find this, try to memorize the Quran. Learn the Tawheed first. You're not young. You have to know the basics. So we have to also understand our situation. especially in the West. Right? It's a big problem. So when you cover the basic, then you say, okay, now I'm good. I know the basics. Okay, Quran Arabic. Because if something happens to me today, at least I finished the basics in front of Allah. I know my Tawheed al-Shahada. This is a big thing. And that's, I think, what we have to pay attention to that reality. And that's why some of this stuff, like I find it's very important. طيب, inshallah. Otherwise, we'll just go to the board very quickly, inshallah. We'll talk about some other beneficial things. سبحانك بحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.